الحمد لله استهل بالحمد خير ما نزل إليك خمسا تبدأ.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Inshallah, we continue with the third juz of the Quran Sharif, Tilka Rusul. This juz, this para consists of a portion or the last portion of Surah Al-Baqarah and the portion of Surah Al-Imran. The surah begins, or the para begins, with Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala making reference to the Anbiya alayhimus salatu wassalam, that all Anbiya alayhimus salatu wassalam are virtuous, all Anbiya alayhimus salatu wassalam are the slaves and servants of Allah Ta'ala, and we are required to bring Iman in each and every one of them. However, Allah has given virtue of some over the other, but insofar as our Iman is concerned, we believe that each and every one of the Anbiya, the prophets, are the slaves and the servants of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Thereafter, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala speaks about Himself and His greatness in an ayah which is known as Ayatul Kursi. This Ayatul Kursi consists of 50 words, and it is broken up into 10 phrases. The name of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala directly and indirectly has been referred to 17 times in this Ayatul Kursi. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala further speaks about Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam when he debated with the rebellious and proud king Namrud. And then Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala speaks about an amazing incident, أو كالذي مر على قرية وهي خاوية على عروشها. Sayyidina Uzair alayhi salatu wassalam was a great Nabi of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, and he passed by a ruined city, and the thought that occurred in his heart is that how would Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala bring back to life the people of the city, and how would Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala have the city reconstructed? So hence Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala had given him death for a period of 100 years, and then he was brought back to life. And of course there was no doubt in any Nabi's mind with regards to the resurrection, but Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala leaves this as a very great lesson for each and every one of us. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala also speaks about Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam, that when he thought about the fact of resurrection, how would it happen? Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala had shown him in an amazing way when Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala commanded him to adopt or to make as pets birds, and Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala then told him to slaughter them, and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala brought them all back to life once again. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala speaks about a very important aspect of our deen and our religion, and that is the aspect of charity that we give only for the sake of Allah Rabbul Izzat. The rewards are tremendous. In the verses here, 700 times more will be given to a person that spends with sincerity for the sake of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. However, there are some very basic aspects that we need to keep away from, and that is الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ أَمْوَالَهُمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ ثُمَّ لَا يُتْبِعُونَ مَا أَنْفَقُوا مَنًّا وَلَا أَذًى. Do not ever follow your spending in the path of Allah by enumerating the favors that you have incurred upon the people whom you spend, and do not harass them, do not hurt or harm them in any way. And that, together with ikhlas and sincerity, will be optimum in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Going further, Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala speaks about riba and interest, that Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala had made sadaqat a part of the life of a believer. Allah ta'ala had made bay transaction permissible. However, Allah ta'ala had made riba and interest haram up to the day of Qiyamah. And any person that involves himself in this should make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and seek forgiveness from Allah Rabbul Izzat. Otherwise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warning in these ayat are absolutely severe and intolerable, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا, if you do not desist from taking interest, devouring interest, involving yourself in interest, فَأْذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, then listen to the announcement of war from Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Terminating the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about other aspects of business transactions like writing them down, etc. And then the surah Al-Baqarah comes to an end and a conclusion with some great du'as from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's side, that Allah has taught the reciter of the Quran, Allah ta'ala has taught this ummah that we should continuously make dua to Allah Rabbul Izzat. And then Surah Al-Imran begins. And Al-Imran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks predominantly about the Nasara. Surah Al-Baqarah was with regards to the Yahud, and here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the Nasara. Approximately 80 ayat, 80 verses of this surah was revealed because of a delegation of Christians consisting of 60 individuals from Najran came to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they began to debate with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam various aspects with regards to their belief about Isa alayhi salatu wasalam being the son of Allah Rabbul Izzat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the miraculous birth of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. However, as a prelude to that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about Sayyida Maryam radiyallahu ta'ala anha's father, Sayyidina Imran, who was a Nabi of Allah and a pious slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and his wife Hannah was a pious woman who feared Allah, and she had excelled in her character. For a long while she had no children. One day she saw a bird feeding its young, and on seeing this, her heart was moved. A desire to bear a child had grown in her heart, and in the courts of Allah Rabbul Izzat, she begged, she petitioned, requested Allah Rabbul Izzat, and together with that, she made a vow that if Allah Ta'ala had granted her a child, she would endow him for the service of Baytul Maqdis. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala accepted her dua. However, a daughter was born to her. It was customary that only men and not women were accepted for the services of Baytul Maqdis. And in the meantime, the father of this child, Sayyidina Imran alayhi salatu wassalam, had already passed on. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala accepted the dua of Hannah, and contrary to the norm and practice of the time, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala had accepted Sayyida Maryam radiyallahu ta'ala anha for the services of Bayt al-Maqdis, and she was put into the care of the Imam of Al-Quds, Al-Aqsa at that time, Hazrat Sayyidina Zakaria alayhi salatu wassalam. Now Sayyidina Zakaria alayhi salatu wassalam would tend to her and see to her needs, and he had noticed that fruit out of season would be present in the mihrab, in the place where Maryam would be making the ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he asked her, where is this coming from? Anna laki hada? Qalat huwa min indillah. She replied that this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He also was a person in senior age, some narrations suggest over 100 years, and his wife also was old and barren. But nonetheless, he made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah ta'ala had granted him a son, Sayyidina Yahya alayhimus salatu wassalam. Then Allah ta'ala speaks about the greatest miracle insofar as birth is concerned, and that is Sayyidina Isa wa ala nabiyyina wa alayhi salatu wassalam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala akins it, inna mathala Isa inda Allahi kamathali Adam, that the birth of Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, his example is like that of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salatu wassalam, that like how Allah ta'ala created Adam alayhi salam without the intervention of a father and a mother, Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala created Isa alayhi salatu wassalam without the agency of a father. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala then speaks about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam invitation to the Najrani Christians of Mubahala, that you come with your close ones, I will come with my close ones, and we will curse whoever is wrong in their claims with regards to Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wassalam from the delegation, the 60 individuals. And in the 60 individuals were 14 high-ranking scholars. None of them accepted the invitation of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala concludes then that Allah has given them the opportunity and obviously the invitation to the acceptance of the kalima La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah tabarak wa ta'ala grant us all the tawfiq. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.
بالحمد حين تقرأ بالحمد حين تقرأ